and welcome to another episode of the Tombstone Tourist. This week I'm at the Old Chapel Hill Cemetery in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. This is a small and historic cemetery located directly across South Road from Carmichael Auditorium on the campus of the University of North Carolina. The first recorded burial here was a student from Burke County, North Carolina named George Clark. He died in September of 1798 while attending the university. Since that first burial, the cemetery has become the final resting place of some of the most prominent members of the university community. People like big band leader Kay Kaiser, who we visited in an earlier video, are resting here along with legendary basketball coach Dean Smith, who I plan to visit in a future video. Today, more than 1,600 people are buried inside the confines of this small cemetery that is surrounded by a rock wall that was built in 1835, including the man that we're going to be visiting today, University of North Carolina graduate and longtime correspondent for CBS News, Charles Kuralt. Charles Bishop Kuralt was born on September 10, 1934, in Wilmington, North Carolina. When he was 11 years old, the family moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, where he entered a sports writing competition that was sponsored by a local newspaper. Charles won the competition, which led to him becoming the youngest sports broadcaster in the country. Where at the age of 14, Charles began covering minor league baseball for the local radio station. Also at 14, Charles was named one of the 4 National Voice of Democracy winners, which came with a $500 scholarship. He graduated from Charlotte Central High School in 1951. The following fall, he used his scholarship to enroll in the University of North Carolina. While a student at North Carolina, Charles became the editor of the Daily Tar Heel, while also working at WUNC Radio. During the summer, he would return to Charlotte, where he would work at WBTV. Charles graduated from North Carolina in 1955 and went to work for the Charlotte News, where he wrote a column called Charles Kuralt's People. The column dealt with the more mundane side of the news. Many of the stories were about how everyday people face the challenges of everyday life. Today, you'd probably call it human interest stories. The column won the Ernie Pyle Award in 1956. A year later, Charles moved to CBS, and at the age of 25 became the network's youngest correspondent. In 1960, Charles became the first host of the weekly series Eyewitness to History. The show took an in-depth look at the week's most significant news event, stories like the Cuban Missile Crisis, Nixon-Kennedy presidential campaign, and the Civil Rights Movement. Charles' career at CBS took off during the 1960 presidential campaign. Charles had a deep voice with a hint of authority, but he wasn't in your face as some of his colleagues. He was not overly dramatic, giving viewers an idea that he was talking with them rather than at them. Charles also covered the Vietnam War, where his reporting brought the terrible war home to America every evening on the CBS Evening News. During one of his tours in Vietnam, Charles was embedded with troops, and during one of the patrols, they were ambushed. More than half of the troops were killed, and Charles reported, "We were lucky to get out alive." Between tours in Vietnam, Charles traveled the world, from the Congo to Germany, from the North Pole to South America. Charles covered a variety of stories for CBS. For more than 10 years, Charles covered what he called hard news. But he always wanted to get back to the softer side of reporting. He wanted to get back to that little column that he wrote back in Charlotte, North Carolina. Charles Kuralt's People was the model for one of the most successful ventures he had at CBS. Charles approached the executives at CBS with an idea of letting him and cameraman just travel down the back roads of America, just to see what we could see. The bosses at CBS agreed to let him try it for 3 months. That 3-month trial turned into one of the most popular features on the CBS Evening News. He called the series On the Road with Charles Kuralt. For more than 25 years, On the Road with Charles Kuralt allowed us to realize that everybody had a story. We just needed to slow down and listen. Charles introduced us to the Chandler family, whose 9 children grew up in poverty on a cotton farm in Mississippi. But through hard work, sacrifice, and a whole lot of love, all 9 of those children grew up to be distinguished college graduates. He told us about working on the railroad and the lonely song of the Gandy dancers. He told us also about George Black, who made many of the bricks that we see today if we walk down the streets of Old Salem in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. The On the Road series ended in 1980 when Charles left the road to become the host of a new CBS News program called Sunday Morning. In true Kuralt fashion, Sunday Morning would be more than a 2 or 3 minute soundbite. It would be made up of feature stories about people and places, about books and art, about things that just made you want to sit back and relax and have your coffee on Sunday morning. From January 28th, 1979 until April 3rd, 1994, Charles Kuralt hosted Sunday Morning, which was one of the network's most popular and enduring shows. When Charles retired from CBS on April 3rd, 1994, he was succeeded by Charles Osgood, who hosted Sunday Morning from 1994 until his retirement in 2016. Jane Pauley took over for Osgood and continues to host the program today. Charles Kuralt was just 60 years old when he retired from CBS News. Over his long career, Charles also wrote a number of books, including North Carolina is My Home, Charles Kuralt's People, Charles Kuralt's America, and of course, On the Road with Charles Kuralt. In retirement, Charles and his wife Petey lived in New York City, where from time to time he returned to TV with an occasional feature for CBS and PBS and a couple of other networks. For several years, Charles suffered from lupus, which eventually caused his health to deteriorate. Charles Kuralt, one of America's great storytellers, passed away on Independence Day, July 4th, 1997, at the age of 62. At his request, he was buried here in the old cemetery on the campus of the University of North Carolina. Well, I'm going to end this video here at the grave of Charles Kuralt. If you remember On the Road or Sunday Morning, what was your favorite story? Please share your memories and thoughts with us in the comments. If you haven't already, I hope you will consider subscribing to my channel. That way you can keep up with all of my travels and know when I post a new video. And if you're so inclined, a thumbs up is always appreciated. Now, until next time, please remember, life is a wonderful journey. Be sure to take time and enjoy it. And I'll see you down the road. So long, everybody.